You need to have a difficult conversation. Well, we can make it easier with the strategies and tools I'm going to share with you right now. What is it that makes these conversations difficult? We may care about the relationship and we don't want to do anything to damage it. Maybe we know emotions are going to run high, either you or in the other person, and so we tend to avoid it. It could be that we know there's going to be opposing views and it's just not a fun conversation to have. Here's when you know it's time to have that conversation. First of all, it keeps you up at night. You can't seem to get it off your mind. Secondly, you know that the outcome is only going to get worse if it doesn't get addressed. Thirdly, if you're supervising this person and there's low morale on the team because of the situation, then you know it's time to have that conversation. So why do we avoid them? We avoid them consciously and subconsciously. Consciously, we just don't want to deal with the emotions. We may think it's better to keep the peace, and it's easier sometimes to let things go on the way they always have because you don't want to have a difficult conversation. That's natural. Guess what? Your mind is doing its job by keeping you safe. When we are thinking about having a difficult conversation, it triggers the amygdala in our brain to say, danger, Will Robinson, this is not going to be a fun experience. It allows us to avoid the conversation. The good news is the tools and strategies I'm about to share with you will help you have a better conversation. There are 3 phases of a difficult conversation: before, during, and after. Before we have the conversation, we can do some amount of planning. Unless we're in the thick of it right now, we can think about what we want to say, how we want to react, and how we want the conversation to end before it even starts. Here's what you can do first. Bring to mind everything you know about the other person. Maybe you need to have a difficult performance evaluation. You've been managing this person for some time, so you have an idea of what motivates them, what triggers them, what stresses them out, and how they may respond to this conversation. That gives you an idea of how you can plan to manage your emotions and responses based on how you think they're going to react. The next thing to do is think about your goal for the conversation. Do you need to deliver a poor performance review or bad news? Do you need to shift gears on a client and you know they're not going to be happy about it? What is the goal for the conversation? The next thing to think about is your intention. Is your intention to hear everyone's perspectives and make sure that you come to a conclusion that everyone will be happy with? Is your intent to nurture the relationship? Or is it to focus on the future instead of hashing out the past? Be very clear about what you want to keep in mind as you go through the conversation. Another way to prepare for the conversation is to do so physically. We know that when we're stressed out, we have cortisol and adrenaline running through our body. And if we go into a conversation that way, we're already starting at a heightened state. So what we need to do is take a deep breath, get centered, put our body in a very comfortable position, maybe even take a walk around the block or do something that you enjoy, listen to some good music so that you decrease the cortisol and the adrenaline, and you can have a better experience going into the conversation. Now, you know you need to be a good listener, but what does that mean? I call it listening as an ally. When you listen as an ally, you're really paying attention to what the person is saying and not saying. Why do you think they're saying what they are? Do you think they're muddling past experiences with the topic at hand? It's helpful for you to know that so you can separate things that may have influenced them before with what you need to talk about right now. You're also listening for their perspective. Is it clear? Are they clear on what your perspective is and what you're asking of them? All right, so you're starting to plan for the conversation. You've downloaded the conversation planner that is in the link below this video. You have thought about your goal, what intention you want to have as you're having this conversation. You've brought to mind everything you know about this person regarding their motivations and triggers, how they may respond to your message. Now it's time to go into the conversation. Be as fact-based as you can. Bring evidence of what you need to address in the conversation and be clear to talk about the impact of those matters. For example, let's imagine you need to address someone on the team who was on a client call with 5 or 6 people there. On the call, they made a rude comment about something the client had said. Immediately after, you received an email from the client stating that they were not happy about how the call went. That would be a good piece of evidence to bring to the conversation so you can explain very objectively to the person the impact that their behavior had on the client. And if you can, talk about the impact of that impact. If the client's not happy and there's a possibility they're going to drop you as a vendor, that's important to bring up. All right, now what if it gets heated? You can be observant of fight, flight, or freeze behavior. When you're in conversation, what can you imagine would be evidence of someone who is in fight mode? Did you think of someone raising their voice or perhaps using crude language? Maybe they're getting defensive or even using attacking language. Evidence of fight mode would look like someone shutting down, avoiding the conversation, maybe using humor to distract you. And freeze mode, that's pretty obvious. They're just not saying anything. Whether they're in fight, flight, or freeze, it's a good time to acknowledge it. Whether it's you or them in fight, flight, or freeze mode, it's a good time to take a break. How do you take a break? Why not say, I need a couple of minutes to get my thoughts together. I'm going to grab some water. I'll be right back. Or how about just owning it? Look, I'm kind of triggered right now and I need a minute to catch my breath. Let me just put some thoughts together. It's okay to stop the conversation and pick it up where you're going to be more productive. All right, so you've done all these things successfully. You're coming to the end. How do you wrap up the conversation? Well, you want to make sure you're both in agreement and you both know what the other person is taking away, what the action items are for each person, and other commitments. Be sure there's a time associated with that so things don't drag on and on. You may even want to agree on a time when you can get back together and revisit the scenario and see what has improved and what you still need to work on. Another way that we learn to shift behaviors is to revisit behaviors from the past. If you can reflect on a conversation that you've had on what you did well and what you would do differently next time, that is really beneficial because that is going to help you understand how to shift your behaviors and reactions and what you say and don't say, do or don't do the next time you're in that situation. Your action item right now is to click below on that conversation planner, use it, reflect on your conversations, and make them easier next time. Good luck with your next difficult conversation, and I'll see you in the next video.